And as you know, we've talked a lot about where we're headed, what we're doing with our school in terms of continuing to meet three goals. Grow our kids, mitigate the virus, and safety for all. And over the last 9 weeks, we've looked at a benchmark of 5 things that would indicate when we would move. As we started to look forward back on September 18th, we met and discussed moving to phase 4. It is now time for us to move to phase 4, and so we're going to ask the board to adopt new benchmarks to help us in this journey. We're also going to share a little bit about what's going to be different as we move to phase 4, and then take any questions that anyone might have with regard to our benchmarking. So first up, we'll talk about the benchmarks. In our first look back in July, when we were talking about the number of cases of COVID in Johnson County, surrounding counties in the state and the nation, we continue to talk about COVID trends, not just positive cases. And that will continue to still be one of our benchmarks as we move forward, the trending data of COVID. One thing we are going to streamline in the future is looking at only one source, and that's Regenstrief out of Eskenazi Hospital. Now, I will tell you, the State Health Department, the global pandemic, all continue to feed from the same stream. Regenstrief does a better job of disaggregating it for us, so that's why we're going to continue to use that data. So we will look at the positive rate. We'll continue to look at the availability of entrance into the hospital, ICU, ventilator capacity. Also inside of Regenstrief, we can see it broken down by demographic information. Ages 5 to 19, 20 to 29, all the way through, as well as other things that would tie into that. With that information, we're also going to make one other shift with regard to COVID trends. In the last benchmarking, we established that COVID trends will make up 49%, 50% of our information. And then we needed one of the 4 others really to tell us if we're going to move forward or not. And those others were, remember, masks, we talked about COVID rules, we talked about indoor air quality, and also cleaning. Those factors played in as the trends continued to hold tight to where they were or slightly decline back in September when we made the decision to go to phase 4 on the 19th. That's where we were. Over the next 2 weeks, we got ready to go to fall break. The data continued to go up, so we asked for a 2-week hiatus. I'll talk about that in a minute. The second benchmark that we're going to allow to come into play is the utilization of face mask compliance. This is going to be a critical and key part of our benchmarking. Right now, the principals at all buildings, K through 12, will go in and count how many kids, how many adults have their face masks on properly. So you've got to have it above your nose, below your mouth, in order to allow for a checkbox on that to be maintained. The first 9 weeks we did a phenomenal job. It was around 94%. We're going to need to continue that. Also, we need to make note that in the past we gave mask breaks. It was easy. We could go outside. It was pretty nice. We're going to continue to try to provide ways to give mask breaks. We're going to ask the principals to use big open spaces in their buildings, spread the kids out so that we can still take that mask off for a little bit and give the kids a break. So it'll be hallways, foyers, cafeterias, media centers, things that have big open spaces for them. And that would still fall inside of our compliance model that we're talking about. And the last benchmark for the new phase is regard to 20% attendance, looking at various subgroups. But it's 20% for the subgroup. For example, if our student attendance goes to 20% or higher for 3 days in a row, that will be a red flag for us to consider moving a building back. The other thing I'm going to ask the board to adopt in this concept for both the high school and middle school is not to always marry them right next to each other. Because sometimes Steve may have everybody in the building and Rita may not. And so we may have to move the middle school back for a short period of time, and vice versa. Now, there'll be times when the district-wide would march together, and we'll be in communication with the board on that. We'll also look at teachers and substitute availability at that 20% threshold, as well as the ability to clean the building for custodial grounds and maintenance so we can maintain our buildings with integrity. And the third one would be the ability to cook and clean for the kids in the cafeteria, because that's a requirement and a must for us as well. So those different subgroups will be monitored, and we'll continue to share that. I'm also going to work with Mr. Sprout and come up with some type of thermometer or dial so the people in the community can see in real time what we're seeing with our data. On Fridays, I'm going to go back to sharing information with both the teachers and the community about what we're seeing, how things are going, so that we can continue to work together to make this thing work. We know that the best teaching takes place when we have kids with their teachers. The pandemic has definitely changed this for everybody. We want to make sure that we're providing an opportunity for our 3 goals to be met. Grow kids, safe for all staff, and mitigate the virus. So that's why we think phase 4 is really the best place to become our new foundation. We'll still have Wednesdays to clean the building. We're going to monitor that. Continue to look at how that's going, and we'll talk with Mrs. Holman and Mr. Ahaus on that journey, as well as monitoring in real time the attendance, the mask compliance, and the COVID trends. So on November 2nd, when we come back with phase 4, those are going to be the benchmarks that I'll be looking at. And I'll be sharing the information out as we travel each week. But I would encourage the parents, I would encourage the students, anyone can look at Regan Street and watch the information. We've had a great partnership with FCTA, and we meet with them on a regular basis to look at the data, to share and get input. The collective decision as we move forward will be, it's like it's been for the last 9 weeks, a collective thought process in order to maintain kids growing, teacher safety, and mitigate this virus. So those are the benchmarks that I'm going to ask the board to approve tonight. At this time, I'm going to shift to the next slide, and we're going to talk about what's new in phase 4 for the middle school, the high school, and then in contact tracing, because that's going to be very significant along the journey. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Ahaus to present the high school.
All right. Well, first I want to say how blessed I think we all feel as a district just to have, there's just been a lot of conversations dating back to May, and to have a board and to have a district that really, all those conversations are wrapped around what's best for kids and what's best for families. So I just feel like that we're fortunate in our district that there has been so much communication, and that we have a board and that we have administrators and people who care about our kids and our families, and that safety's a concern that's been there ever since day one, and I appreciate it. And I think as we look at what the high school, what we've been doing, I think our plan from the beginning has been that we would always phase through to this point at some period of time. So there will be some things that would change, but there's also some things that are already in place that we will just need to monitor as we make that next step. So I think first, starting with the beginning of the day, of course we'll bring more students in on buses and in cars, but we feel like that process, we're going to monitor that. So we have people in all of our various places that are going to monitor that. We've already shortened the amount of time between when kids enter the building and when school starts, so that we don't have a lot of kids coming in and just standing in places and being in places. We kind of get them to class right away. So right now we feel like we can get students off of buses, out of their cars. We come in from 3 different entrances. So we feel like the start of the day that we can manage that. Of course, we're going to monitor it, and if we see some areas where kids are congregating or we're having trouble, we can make some changes to those processes. In the classroom, we've already asked teachers to get all of the furniture out of their rooms. That's not necessary. Space desks out as much as we can. Now we do have some chairs in places because we've had half the kids that they're not all the way out to the walls in different places because we were able to manage 6 feet or more without doing that when you might have 10 or 12 students. But we're getting ready to rearrange all of those desks, use as much space as we can in the classrooms. We have all the excess furniture and items out of there, so I think we're ready for that. That will not be a difficult move. We do know that we won't be able to maintain 6 feet in all areas. We will have classrooms that can do that. We'll have areas. Performing arts, you're in a space right now that's a very large space that we will be able to get students spaced out in, large gyms, field house, cafeteria, media center, but there's other areas, regular classrooms with sizes that will be 4.5 feet, 4 feet instead of 6 feet. But that would be part of that transition to that. So we're going to go through and we'll audit all the classrooms and walk through and make sure that our desks are as far apart as they can be and that we're maximizing all room in our classrooms. Lunch, we have, you could walk down there now and see our main lobby and see areas where we've got tables and chairs. We're already ready for the added students into the building where we can keep that distance during lunch. And we will not have to make changes to our normal cafeteria setting because we've already got that set up. We can add more students into the cafeteria now. And so we'll do that, and then combined with the space outside of the cafeteria, we'll be able to manage that. Hallway traffic, we're fortunate at the high school to have a pretty open air, large building for traffic. So right now we have a really good flow to our building as it is, but we're going to monitor that. And if we need to change traffic patterns in our building, we're somewhat concerned that if we funnel kids and tell them only certain places they can go and only certain directions they could go, we might be more funneling students than we are allowing the open flow that our building already has, but we'll monitor that to see if that's something that we need to change. At the end of the day, we're going to run a staggered release just by a couple of minutes, but just enough to let one wave kind of get out. That does get a little more congested than the flow of the building in, so we'll be able to manage that. We've got those plans in place already. As far as academic, we would like to propose, or the plan is in place to remove final exams from our schedule for this first semester, giving us the final exam preparation and final exams takes about 2 weeks of our semester each semester. That would give us 2 more weeks of instruction that we would tell teachers, gain those 2 weeks of instruction back and let's go all the way to the end of the semester and continue the flow of your curriculum. We don't feel, now we will have some courses that will be required to give a final exam. We have some dual credit classes and some classes through IU and different places where we have to give some of those assessments, very few of those. So we would ask the rest of the teachers to continue their curriculum all the way out through the rest of the semester and get all of those days in. We also, some concerns around the building will be at the high school level from a cleaning standpoint, that a lot of the things we've been able to do have been outside, will all now come inside. So for our custodial staff, we're going to have to keep monitoring their capability of keeping things clean night to night, day to day, so that Wednesday could continue to be important for us, as now we have basketball practices, wrestling, swimming, performing arts will move inside. And so we have processes to keep those rehearsals and those practices safe. But then those are things that our custodial staff will now have to take on because those are areas and things that we haven't been before. So there will be some added responsibility there to them. So we'll continue to monitor that and see how that goes. And then we'll look at, from our standpoint, Wednesdays academically, what we use those Wednesdays for a combination of trying to keep kids caught up, remediation, as well as extending our instruction through those Wednesdays. We know that there are some things that we need to get caught up on as well. So from a high school standpoint, I think most of our systems are in place. We've been preparing for this. While we'll make changes, they're changes that we've been planning for some time. So,
thank you, Mr. Ahaus. Mrs. Holman.
I'm going to mirror a lot of the things that Mr. Ahaus just said at the middle school level. In addition to the appreciation for the support and the communication, I think that the transparency that Franklin has offered, sometimes that comes with a level of difficulty as well, just by being transparent. But I would like to just thank you for the level of transparency between administration and the board with the community and our plans as we've moved forward. I also think that the plans that we put in place at the building level were in preparation to bring all students back into the building. So we've been practicing for this since before the beginning of the school year. We made a lot of pretty drastic changes to the way that we run the building, and we've seen some pretty positive results because of that, and we've had a lot of time to practice now what it's going to look like when everyone's back together again. Starting with the beginning of the day, students come straight from the bus, straight from car rider line, 2 entrances, and they go straight to first period. They pick up their breakfast on the way, and they've been eating in their first period class. We've built a little bit of extra time into that first period class so that they have time to do that. We have building level announcements, and teachers just have an opportunity just to get set for the day. With that, there's no need for large group congregating in the morning, which is one of the things that we've always done. We've had about 20 minutes at the beginning of the day where students congregate in the gymnasium or in the cafeteria, and so there's no need for that at this point. We have one-way traffic marked, or I guess it's two-way traffic marked in the hallway so students know to use the right side of the hallway, which they don't always follow that pattern. So they know that now. We have signage that reminds students to keep moving, stay to the right, and wear their masks. And we have encouraged teachers to be out and just reminding students it's been very easy so far, and kids are in the habit of doing that. We reduced the number of minutes during passing periods so that students can get from point A to point B quickly without unnecessary congregating in the hallways as well. We also got rid of lockers, which was a big deal this year, but students have really adjusted, and it's actually been okay. We're working on getting unnecessary items out of the backpacks so that they can carry their things from one place to the next. And that's our plan for now. We do know that with winter coming, there may be a need to adjust, and we have a plan for that as well, so that we can strategically place lockers in a place where students might have access in the morning and in the afternoon, but not between classes, because we feel like that's been a really positive impact on getting kids from one place to the next. Additionally, we've taken restroom breaks out of that passing period and scheduled them into different classes throughout the day. We have one in the morning, one at lunchtime, and then one in the afternoon with additional minutes. That way teachers can supervise and monitor the number of kids that are congregating in the restrooms at any given time. And then our custodial staff goes through after those times and cleans the restrooms each time so that they're sanitized in between. Lunch was a big deal. That was a big change for us. Having so many kids in a very small space obviously was not ideal. So our option was to utilize the gymnasium. I had my reservations, to be honest, before the school year started. Kids have adjusted, and they actually, I think, enjoy being in that open area in the gymnasium. It's been a positive thing, I think, for a lot of kids. We have 2 different places where kids get their lunch. It's staggered, so teachers walk kids down, drop them off. We have a very seamless flow of getting their lunches and then heading to their spots. We have places in the gym and also in the cafeteria that are designated so that they've been measured to be 6 feet apart, so that our students can eat lunch and maintain that social distance. It works right now with half capacity. I wasn't certain if we'd be able to maintain it, but we've moved a couple of classes so that when we are in full capacity, we're going to add a couple more classes to the gymnasium, and we're going to be able to maintain that 6 feet of social distance. While we won't be able to have it in the classrooms, we've done the same things at the middle school that Mr. Ahaus talked about at the high school, moving things out and trying to get as much space as possible in the classrooms. We know that we're not going to be able to maintain that, but we will at lunch. So that'll be a nice time for kids to be able to kind of spread out and relax, take their masks off, and enjoy their lunch. So we'll continue with that. At the end of the day, we've done a staggered release at the end of the day as well, so that teachers are escorting kids out. It's been a pretty close staggered when we only have half the number of kids, so we'll have to extend that just a little bit so that there's not quite so many, and we have continued supervision all the way out of the hallway just to keep kids moving. We're going to have to adjust some supervision so that for a car rider line, we know that that's going to be a large number of kids waiting for cars for maybe an extended period of time. So we're going to have to adjust a little bit of supervision so that we can monitor that. And that's going to be just another one of the small changes that we'll make when we are full capacity. But it's been working as we've adjusted this beginning of this year. So, if you ask what's going to change between now and the beginning of the year, there's just some tweaks, monitoring, making sure that it's working. The big changes happened at the beginning of this year, and our kids did a stellar job. Our teachers have jumped in, and it's been actually a really great start to the school year. So I don't anticipate a large number of issues when we go from phase 2 to phase 4. I would also mirror the things that he's talked about with the cleaning on those Wednesdays. The increased amount of work during the day has caused for some of the deeper cleans during the afternoon times to be put off to those Wednesdays. And so I know that with the addition of indoor activities and a large number of kids that are using more spaces for lunchtime, just that necessary deep clean and sanitization, and then some of the things that get pushed off on the daily cleaning is when, that Wednesday is going to be used for that. So that's what we're doing at the middle school.
Thank you, Mrs. Holm. And last, probably the most significant change that we will see will be regarding contact tracing. Mrs. Martin and her team of nurses have done a phenomenal job of contacting parents, tracing kids where a COVID positive case would be in the building. This will change as we move to phase 4, so I've asked her to come and articulate that change and what does that mean for us in Franklin schools.
Yes. So first off, I want to reiterate what Rita and Steve had said as far as thank you. There was no playbook for a pandemic, and so I'm super proud of what we have accomplished in a relatively short amount of time. We've provided the safest learning opportunity for our students, and so moving forward, I think we'll continue to do that, and I think the best is yet to come. So with that being said, I'm going to give you a little bit of history with our COVID quarantine numbers. We had we've been tracing, obviously, since the beginning of school. So up until October 7th, we had a total of 9 positive cases in our district. We quarantined 29 individuals. So with that being said, if you compare it to other districts in our community, they were seeing upwards of 31 cases with close to 400 individuals quarantined. So we know the hybrid schedule worked for us. We were able to maintain distance and keep kids in school for the most part, with very little disruption from what we had set out. We also know families have done their part well. So a special thank you to our families. They have done a phenomenal job at keeping their kids home when they began to exhibit COVID symptoms, as well as our staff. They have been self-monitoring, and they too have been staying home when symptoms presented themselves. So that has helped us in our quarantine situation tremendously. We are all going to continue to be in this together, and we'll need to continue to work together moving forward, because my prediction with our new phase is that we will see larger numbers of students and staff test positive, and then in result, we're going to have larger numbers of individuals that are going to be identified as a close contact, which will result in a quarantine. A quarantine lasts 14 days, and that begins on your last day of exposure to a positive case. So our best guess is that we're going to see about 15 to 30 individuals quarantined per positive case. So that is a little bit different than what we've seen so far. So I feel like I need to say this out loud for those that are here or watching at home so that we're all clear and there's no misconceptions. We are going to have more students and staff out moving forward. To the parents and the staff, this means that any day, at any moment, you could be disrupted by a phone call from myself or someone on my team that your child or yourself has been identified as a close contact. We understand the news will shock you. We're going to do our best to ease your fear and your anxiety, because that does seem to happen some. We'll continue to address concerns and unknowns that will happen in the days that follow. We also understand being identified as a close contact comes with some sacrifices. Besides the possibility of developing COVID, that means no extracurriculars, sports, choir, band, FFA, and so on. Jobs, family trips, special events are going to have to be missed during this quarantine period. Some of the sacrifices might be hard to swallow. They might be painful, but we'll do our best to continue to provide the safest in-person learning environment in the midst of a pandemic. We have and will continue to follow the protocol that's set by the State Board of Health and the Indiana Department of Education. Our role is to provide a safe in-person learning environment that we can, and with our team, continue to do the best we can given our circumstances. So, is there any questions?
I have one question, and could you just talk to us a little bit about if I'm a close contact and I go get tested, does that matter?
No.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about
so
that?
if you are a close contact to a positive, there is no note or no test that you can provide to get you out of your 14-day quarantine. It is a 14-day quarantine from your last day of exposure. So does that make sense? There's nothing you can do. Because you have to give your body long enough for the virus to incubate in your system and present itself. So that's why you have to do the 14 days, because you've been exposed to
Amanda?
someone. Yes.
Sorry, I'm like floating above you. Is that because the virus can be inside of you and you can infect other people, but yet the virus is not showing up on the test?
Correct. So the virus takes 2 to 14 days to incubate. So if you test on day, let's say 7, and it's negative, you still have 7 more days that the virus could come, you could become positive.
But you could be contagious and give it to others during those first 7 days?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. I think that's an important point that isn't super clear to the general public, so thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and I think the other thing that we've seen over the last 9 weeks is if a person does then get that positive test, now the contact tracing changes again for Amanda as she travels and find out who was in contact with that new positive. So that's the other thing just to remember. We want parents to be safe with their children and the faculty and staff. But
Yes.
just know that Amanda can't control the 14 days. And as we move forward to indoor activities, that can probably see an increase. The other thing I would ask you, can you briefly just talk about close contact? Define close contact.
So close contact is within, everyone has a 6-foot bubble. So if someone is in that 6-foot bubble for a total of 15 minutes in a 24-hour time span, that's a close contact. If you give someone a hug, if you sneeze, cough, you share a utensil, a drinking glass, that's close contact. If you share droplets in the air somehow. If you live with or have had a sleepover with someone that's positive, that's a close contact. And it doesn't matter if you have a mask, plexiglass in front of you, a barrier. If you're within that 6 feet or one of those others, you would be considered a close contact. So there's potential for a lot of people to be exposed to or to be identified as a close contact. So that's what we have to be we really do have to continue to do our best to social distance, not to give hugs or sneeze or, the mask will help, but we still have to be, as we're entering flu season and as we're getting into the winter months, all the experts have said this is the second wave that's coming. So we have to continue to do our best to encourage hand washing in the classroom, distance when we can. And this isn't just in the school setting. This needs to continue on outside of school. And I think that's something that we are seeing that we're really, really good about during the school day, but then at dismissal, it's kind of like we forget sometimes that we need to continue to social distance in our personal lives. And that's hard, but we do. And I think as a community, we need to continue to remind people of that, especially as the numbers in our county are increasing. We have to just continue to follow the guidelines and hopefully get through this sooner than later.